Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am a father of 2 children now, and I shall proclaim that is my, as Suchita says, that is my addition to this world, is what she said before we kind of came in. But I am a happy father of 2 as of this episode.
Oh my God, congratulations.
It's been interesting. I pulled a fast one on everybody again.
How did you pull a fast one?
Because you and I were supposed to meet.
Oh, actually,
and my excuse for not meeting you the day we would have finally have met in person
was
the fact that I had a baby that day.
Oh my God. Which is, I mean, to be fair, it's a very legit excuse, dude. Like, I would, yeah.
But it's not an excuse you hear often enough, so.
Oh yeah, that's true. Hey man, can't meet you today because a child just dropped from heaven.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, but are you excited? Are you happy? Are you like...
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's actually, so I think the second time it's a lot more chill because you've done this before. You also have Leia's now 5. So we've been doing this now for a bit. So it's a lot more relaxed this time in terms of we know what to do. We're not too stressed about it. So it's been
this
great.
Is me pretending to be interested in you talking about
chill dude.
Children.
He's a chill dude. But are you interested in cricket is my question. Are you interested in cricket? Did you watch the India-Pakistan match yesterday?
There you go with your segue. But congratulations, brother. And no, I did not watch the India-Pakistan match because I had other things to do.
India-Pakistan match? That is the one legit thing you have to do.
I was watching Love Island Season 8, Episode 24 instead.
Ladies and gentlemen, anti-national co-host I have, anti-national, not supporting our country.
I was like, oh shit, now people are going to come at me on Twitter. Cricket bores me, I'm sorry guys. But what happened in the match? India won, obviously match must
India won, no, so interesting part is last time India-Pakistan played together, there was this thing where Hardik Pandya had to be taken off the ground on a stretcher because it hurt his back.
Bro, pop culture I follow. I saw
Hardik Pandya. And this time he kind of came back and he really... And there was genuine swag there, right? Because there was this point when he had to hit some 6 runs to win, and he just tells the other guy, "Don't worry, I got this," and he hits a 6. So it was like one of those moments that you see, oh my God, thank God I stayed awake.
I saw Jay Shah refuse to hold the Indian flag, which has become a whole other conversation / meme factory unto itself.
Don't you feel like Twitter? I don't know if I take Twitter seriously anymore. I just kind of feel like there is so many parallel paths of conversation happening. At some point, I feel like I go through phases of tuning out of Twitter, but that was literally my reaction. I'm like, it's fine, guys. Let's just go ahead.
Yeah.
You're just looking at one part or something, and I'm not like...
Yeah.
But
I didn't watch the match.
I have zoned out of Twitter lately.
I've zoned out of all social media lately. I just have I'm in a very, content, let's reflect on life phase. Yeah.
A good way to reflect on life?
By listening to podcasts.
It's called Read My Book. It's called Everything is Out of Syllabus.
Oh my God. We are not plugging your book in anymore. But guys, what else podcasts are coming to Twitter? Are you shocked? Are you surprised? Has Twitter Spaces gone anywhere before podcasts come on Twitter?
So actually Spaces has been doing reasonably well, I think. I don't know what Twitter is up to lately because there's a lot of stuff happening on Twitter, but also I've zoned out a little bit from Twitter. But Spaces has been active. People are still using it. It's a good feature to have on Twitter, to be honest. I think that's the way they've looked at it. And so because they've kind of doubled down on that and it's now part of literally there's a tab for Spaces on Twitter. So makes sense that they would get podcasts in. I feel the way they're kind of testing it out, from what the article kind of says, is that testing it in that tab and just some shows are going to show up there. I don't know how much that will play in because people have been talking about podcasts on Facebook, podcasts on LinkedIn. LinkedIn also has a very different podcast plan.
Yeah.
And now Twitter as well. So I was a little it doesn't feel like, oh my God, thank God, Twitter's going to save podcasts.
This was bound to happen. Yeah. But speaking of taking a cue from how you like to intro segments, but speaking of nothing to do with Twitter or podcasts at all, Adani Group has been in the news. Apparently, they are both over-leveraged and they have bought NDTV.
Yeah, but I think the buying NDTV thing, if you read deeper into it, it's not, I feel that at some level, they literally just bought a company that already owned a big chunk of NDTV, right? So I didn't read this as, oh my God, Adani now owns it. I'm like, somebody else owned it anyway. These guys just bought the guys who owned that part. But I guess you're seeing a lot of that happening, right, with the Adani Group. The amount of things they've actually bought in the last 5-10 years has been crazy as the scale. Hence, deeply over-leveraged.
Yeah, but I think the one thing that the one feeling that I felt for sure, keeping the technicalities of it aside, because I also only read the headline and then obviously other pieces of, news became much more apparent and evident that something like this was bound to happen. But keeping all that aside, I think it just hits you somewhere, right? Like that there is literally genuinely no independent media as such, and not to say that media has ever been independent. I think this assumption that just because you're paying subscription, the news is as independent as it comes is not true, because, and I think that's a problem with news as well, right? But maybe that's another conversation for another day. But deeply upsetting to know that my one source of news has also gone under the general overview of the two people who basically run this country.
Yeah, but I don't get a large part of my news from television networks anymore. And I feel a lot of people, and I'm a minority in that sense, I'm sure. But I think television news has gone in this direction for a while now. And NTV anyway had kind of become a shadow of the way it was even like 15 odd years ago. So yes. In brighter news, have you read about the AirPods and their mind-blowing revenue?
No,
and
I have not, but I am not surprised.
So, I mean, there was this article out there, it doesn't surprise anyone. Simple fact is AirPods by itself has so much like revenue that it kind of astounds anybody to see that, okay, this is how much it has grown. It's literally the total revenue of Twitter, Spotify, Shopify, and Snapchat all put together. Revenue for 2018, 2019.
But what a stupid comparison. Like, I think people who write tweets like this need to be like banned from Twitter.
So what actually happened with that tweet, though, it brought an interesting conversation out. And I feel that that's what ended up happening is that people can talk about, okay, once again, you're also riding on the distribution of Apple products. And also like in many cases, you're looking at platforms, your software, social media platforms, you're kind of comparing that to a hardware company in that sense and stuff like that. So I felt it brought out a lot of relevant pieces. So there's a thread there. We should actually link it up in the show notes. It's an interesting one to see a lot of the points that came out because of this tweet.
Yeah.
And you can kind of dig into that one as well. Nykaa is launching its first athleisure and lingerie store in Delhi. Something in your hood? What is happening?
Of course. Just because it's Nykaa, I happen to know everything that they do.
Everything?
No, but of course, I am only the one launching their store in New Delhi. Guys, I'm joking. I have absolutely nothing to do with the store at all. But I think that play is interesting, man. Keeping Nykaa aside for a second, I have genuinely been thinking about what new is happening in retail, because I think obviously the 2 years of COVID majorly screwed retail up top to bottom, right? Because people were experimenting funner formats before COVID. Like, Fab India had done this whole thing on Fab India experience centers with Fab Cafe and their kid zones and this, that, and the other. Other companies were also exploring, more multi-category formats within their store. I'm finally taking a holiday, hopefully on Thursday, where I'm going to the US. And like the number one thing on my agenda is to see if there are any more innovations in retail. So keeping these two things aside, I think the general interesting play that seems to be happening in retail now is, it's not like Nykaa has launched overall fashion store where, lingerie and athleisure is a subsegment within the store. It's almost like they're taking large niches. And I know we have a story coming up on XYXX later, but they're taking these large subcategories and are building retail experiences around that. But generally, I am very keen on seeing what's happening in the world of retail.
Yes, actually, it has been like a major, like lots of stuff happening kind of week this week. Another few more pieces here. But what are we discussing this week? I thought we'll jump straight to that.
We are discussing, number one, mergers and acquisitions. Then we'll get into chuddies. Then we'll get back into mergers and acquisitions with the latest merger / semi-acquisition of Third Eye Distillery and Svami. And what the two stories that you picked out?
My chuddy story, which is XYXX.
No, bhai, also this long attention spans for long videos.
Yes, correct.
The Google story.
I blame becoming new father again. But yes, so Google had an interesting study about how long attention spans are there for longer videos and how that's kind of tracking in terms of how content is being consumed. So we'll dip into that as well. Beyond that, we shall talk about all kinds of nonsense and do time pass as they showed us, because it's called Think Fast and also time pass. But before we do that, we shall take a break. Be right back with time pass. Welcome back to Time Pass, or as we call it, Think Fast. Suchita, you wanted to talk about mergers and acquisitions because you have just been through one, and I had a long process of being in one as well. But although mine's a little, I wouldn't say dated, but it's been about 5 years now.
Yeah.
But what did you want to talk about it? What did you?
Oh my God, so much, and let me sort of, double tap on one big conversation that I think needs to be had. Like, I feel like there's like two types of people, there's two types of conversations around M&A, right? One conversation is, oh my God, wow, amazing, wow, wow, wow. And the second type of conversation, is like people making M&A sound almost like getting syphilis. You know what I mean? Like, it's like...
Yeah, company बेच दिया.
Exactly. Oh my God, आपने कंपनी बेच दिया, ऐसा क्यों किया, कैसे किया, क्यों हुआ? And there are all sorts of dumb theories that come up, around M&A at large. But I think conversations that need to happen more often within the startup ecosystem is that at the end of the day, if you started a company, you need to figure out ways to give an exit, right? You need to give an exit to your investors. You need to give an exit even to your employees. And exit doesn't mean that people leave, right? Exit basically means you create an opportunity for liquidity at some scale. And then you figure out who wants to go, who wants to stay. And that's, really the end all and be all of it. And I think for our ecosystem to be healthy and to continue to be healthy, so much, there has to be more activity, especially in the M&A space, because let's be honest, there are very few Indians who can genuinely afford, all things consumer brands, consumer tech, and the likes. The second is there's too much money that's being burnt on things that aren't necessarily disruptive, but basically things that companies are doing to gain market share, right? A big example over here being what's happening in quick commerce. And we've already seen one consolidation happen in the form of Blinkit and Zomato. I'm sure we guys can collectively anticipate more, consolidations, whether it's in fintech or, just consumer tech at large. And I think, before I hand over the mic to you, I think one like last thing that I'll put over here is, I'm a big believer in, and I'm not saying this in a naive way, but I'm a big believer in the power of when two very good sets of people come together to, add value to each other's businesses. But long story short, I think, more than anything else, conversations around M&A in India need to become, I wouldn't even say like, build them up unnecessarily, but I think conversations need to become much more healthier, and M&A should be encouraged, man. I think it's great. I mean, I'm so glad that, and I'm sure, at some level you feel the same. It's so nice to have, been able to build a company, scale it, and then actually see, the whole sort of circle come 360 degrees. But what was your M&A experience like, man?
The agency space, largely you either stay independent or you get acquired, has been the way things have worked, right? And we honestly didn't even know it was a thing till people approached us at some point of time and be like, okay, how does that even happen? And so we had to kind of learn that from scratch. And I feel that's one big problem, right? There's not enough education about how you look at a merger and acquisition. How do you, what are the points you need to keep in mind? How do you kind of look at what are the terms you need to kind of like make sure you have in your contract? We thankfully had, so Roshan, who was our first investor, Roshan had been through the same process for his agency. So we thankfully had him, on the board, on the cap table. So he kind of could turn around and say, guys, this is a point you got to kind of focus on, or these are things to keep in mind. And that really helped us. And we also had like bankers who had done this before. But when we kind of went through, and our process was very long, we did 2-year due diligence. We ran through almost all ad networks we spoke to, eventually chose the one we did. Because it was a tricky choice for us. We were a profitable business. We were growing quite well. But we knew that it had to tick off a few things we wanted to do. One is to do a lot more global work. One is to have our people have opportunities to kind of do stuff globally as well and kind of scale in that sense of the word. And also give the business some level of stability. I think an acquisition, what it does is, if you kind of build something and it's part of a larger piece, that's kind of taken care of. You're not worried about things kind of taking it sideways. Let's say COVID happens, affects business, you're part of a larger group. They kind of like help you in many ways, right? So that was our thing. So we went through a long process. I think especially people need to learn how to look at due diligence and how that works. I spent a long time in the trenches on that one. But I feel it's also important to kind of coach people on what to look out for when you're looking to get acquired. Yeah. People think it's just about the money. It's not. If it's just about the money, then those deals generally don't go that well.
One, they don't go well. And second is those deals usually never close. And, similar to like in your case, even we had a lot of inbound last year. I mean, fortunately, we were in a place where, we had like multiple sort of like terms under discussion, and multiple companies approach us. And fortunately for us, it was a choice, right, where we had options, and then it came down to where we saw the best fit. And I think that's how acquisition should be. Like, acquisitions at the end of the day, and that's a thing that I don't see enough founders do, right? Someone had tweeted about this, and I couldn't give this advice more to more founders, which is every single year, right, you should talk to other companies in the same space as you. And see where fitments lie. Because you never know what frame of mind you, your company, or whatever else is in, where actually an acquisition is, can be a great way to build a business. And I mean, you've seen it happen in your case. And obviously, not to say that I can look through a, looking glass or whatever and predict what the future will be, because M&As can be very tricky, and, nothing is... You know what I mean? Like things can go sideways, right? It could either work really well, or it could be like totally catastrophic. But, even my experience with Nykaa so far, touchwood, has been, one where both companies are looking at the conversation through, okay, what can we do to really grow and build each other up? Versus, you know what I mean? Versus where it's like a shark eats fish, kind of situation or scenario. And along with you, dude, a lot of my other friends who've gone through the M&A process, obviously there are some cases where people have been, pushed into a corner and haven't had options. But I think for people who have had options, generally I've seen founders be fairly happy about at least landing their ship safely. And like you said, focusing on things that give them more joy.
I've actually spoken to a lot of founders from the ad space. So whenever someone's even considering it, I know they kind of reach out and they kind of want to have a chat. And I feel the big question mark are two things, right? One is everyone say, okay, should I just choose whoever gives me the most money? And my answer is always no. Because while you want to give shareholders the best value, and you should, I think that eventually adds up, it becomes the best value as the process kind of goes on. But you got to look at is it a culture fit in that sense? Are your people going to be happy? Because in our case, we're people-driven business, right? We're not proprietary tech or platform or anything like that. Are you also, how is it going to help the business kind of grow? Are you going to get fully integrated? Are you going to be allowed to operate independently? You got to have a list of those questions down and really kind of work with the people there. Also kind of chart out how it's going to work and be prepared for a lot of things to change in the first year. Maybe in the second year as well. Because, for us, I remember that a lot of stuff operationally, and that stuff you wanted solidity in operations and finance and legal and everything else. But that just makes a lot of other stuff slower because you're being, more structured in the way it works and not freewheely, while we had already reduced the freewheely by then. So I feel that takes some getting used to, and you will feel that, oh my God, I've done this now. Have we changed?
Yeah.
But I feel that you give it that first year or so and you see that things kind of blend in, things kind of start working well. And so that's the cycle which I know I went through, right? Because 2018 is when you got acquired, and we've just about sometime recently started vested all our equity and no longer a shareholder in the business. But what we have kind of seen is the business has bloomed and people have kind of grown and it's become a strong part of the network. I think when you see that, it feels validated that you took the right call. But people kind of don't look at it from that long lens oftentimes. That first year, everybody has so many issues and jitters. It's bound to happen.
Yeah. I think one last thing that I'll say about this is, I think founders who are very steadfast, they can navigate any acquisition situation very, very, very well. I think it's, at the end of the day, if you're a confident founder who has domain expertise in what you've built or in categories that you know well, I would just say, don't be overwhelmed by being acquired by a company that, prima facie may be much larger than you. Because I think the thing that I've also seen is through the multiple conversations that we had, not multiple as in a lot, but, through the couple of conversations that we had with large companies. But I think even companies today are hungry for, talent that knows how to work and knows how to get things done. And I think that founder mentality, the last thing I'll say on this is there are too many very good founders working on subscale companies in India. I think if more founders, who are working on subscale companies spent that time, effort and energy in just, working off of opportunities that they could be given if they were under a larger umbrella, it would do good for category building and the ecosystem at large. Sorry, I'm a little sleepy today, so I sound incoherent, but you guys get the gist.
Just adding one piece to this is that I feel there's an opportunity because there's so many mergers and acquisitions that happen but aren't spoken about enough. People don't even know how to go about it. I think there's an opportunity there in the market, right? I know of a few startups who have started to kind of build in this space to kind of figure, is there a better model to almost like figure this matchmaking of sorts. Because a lot of them are in stealth, I can't even talk about them. But their friends are kind of building that out, which is why I know about it. But I think that's interesting because that's an untapped space. You hear about all the venture capital stuff, but this is a need, right? People want teams, people want capabilities, people want something that you kind of built out. You can be part of something larger. So I think it's going to be an interesting space to look out for, look at mergers and acquisitions and really see how that evolves.
Yes, queen.
Speaking of mergers and acquisitions, like you said. So I wouldn't call this a merger and acquisition, but it's moving on to our next story. Third Eye Distillery, which are the makers of Stranger & Sons, the gin brand. They've taken a controlling stake in Svami, the tonic water company. Kind of feels like solid, good synergy in that sense. Also, instantly, they both share a co-founder. So Rahul Mehra, who's one of the co-founders at Swami, is also one of the co-founders of Stranger & Sons, or rather Third Eye Distillery. So it's an interesting coming together of really good gin brand, with homegrown one with a really good tonic brand. I think it makes sense. Full disclosure, I'm an early investor in Swami, so I want to kind of put that out there. I'm putting it nicely.
Okay, great. What does that disclosure have to do with anything, Varun?
I just want to tell people, it's important, right? I'm disclosing if I'm involved in any story in any small way, I will disclose it because I am that kind of person.
Got it. Understood. No, but I think this is great. I think it's absolutely excellent because related and unrelated to the conversation that we had before. But for example, like if you look at the Glitch, right? You guys were acquired by WPP. One of the biggest reasons, I'm assuming, the largest ad agencies would want you guys is because you understood digital and content for digital better than your traditional ad guys, right? So, and I think this is what makes this Milan of, and not to say that Swami or Stranger & Sons are anywhere at the general scale of WPP or even, perhaps where you guys were when you guys got acquired. But the point that I'm getting to is a lot of these categories are built through ecosystem build-outs. In fact, if anyone wants to win in consumer anything today, you have to think ecosystem, right? You saw that with Diageo's investment in Now Spirits, which is the holding company of Greater Than and Hapusa. You've seen that with, now these two happening and these two sort of coming together. But anyone building for consumers, you cannot think in just one product, one SKU, one subcategory. You have to think in ecosystems. And this Milan is like a great example of, the Third Eye Distillery guys and the Swami guys wanting to make an ecosystem play versus just wanting to make a category play, which in my opinion is extremely powerful.
They are kind of talking about becoming like a house of brands in this space. I think it makes sense because Swami just doesn't do tonic, right? They've over the last couple of years kind of diversified into like a 2-calorie cola. They have like a salted lemonade, a bunch of other stuff which you can kind of buy, which isn't connected to gin. I feel it'll be interesting to see, because I know that the article kind of talks about how they plan to kind of bring in plantation rum into India as well. So as they're adding more alcohol brands in their portfolio, they can also add stuff that goes with it or can just be independent of it, because Swami also has a non-alcoholic gin and tonic and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of put this together and how that kind of go-to-market happens. But from what at least the article says is the fact that they're going to be running independently, but it's just going to help both of them grow.
Yeah, and within the gin space in general, right? Like gin kind of started out like beer, where you had this craft movement. Like, remember when Bira came out, there was White Owl and like, Pink Owl and like 20 other beer companies that all came up at the same time.
Yeah.
And now you've obviously seen Bira kind of rule the roost and everyone else is fallen away. It seems like the same things happened with gin, right? Where there was a point in time where literally every South Delhi boy was launching a gin brand. And there were all kinds of brands that were coming out from the same 3 distillers in Goa. So it seems like even gin is seeing this movement of, consolidation, people doubling down and focusing on spaces and positioning that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
So long story short, I think gin as a category is going to go through what beer went through, which is people coming together, people figuring out, where can we piggyback off of each other's strengths. And it'll be sad to see, but I don't think there'll be too many craft gin makers left at the end of 2023. What is your take on that?
It's also a very tiny market, right? If you look at the Indian market, we're predominantly whiskey drinkers. I think the largest amount of whiskey in the world, if I'm not wrong, is consumed in India. We are the highest
for a brown spirits
in that
market.
Space. Yeah, and while vodka, gin, all these things are a part of it, I feel this is a way to kind of build out multiple brands. And I'm sure there's a whiskey in the offing. You're seeing, focus on tequila coming up, but a trickier one because you have to, import the agave from Mexico for it to technically be called tequila in that sense. So a lot of action happening here, but again, it's all of these are tiny pockets, but I think they go after premium pieces. Plus, also, you forget that it doesn't necessarily only have to be consumed in India. This can be easily exportable, already is being exported to multiple countries. And I feel that might actually be the game, if it makes sense, because that's where you can actually really kind of scale out in a category like gin, rather than just focusing on the Indian consumer, because this is a premium piece to kind of have. But it'll be interesting to see how this kind of plays out. I've been bullish on this category for a while because I think now we finally have a lot of options. But when these guys all started off, there weren't enough options, right? You would literally get what? Schweppes, tonic water, and gin was blue ribboned if you couldn't afford the international ones.
Yup.
I think it's time for a break. Is it time for a break? Maybe some gin, considering we're recording at night. But we do not record this after consuming or before. Before consuming alcohol? Yes, before consuming alcohol is when we record. Because sometimes after this recording, Suchita needs a drink. But before we do that, we need to take a break.
Right now, I need coffee. But yes, let's take a break.
Coffee at this hour? Right, terrible. Don't have caffeine after 4 p.m.
Why, Papa Ji? Just because you have 2 children, now you're fathering a third one. What is
caffeine stays in your system. Guys, random fact. Caffeine stays in your system for 8 hours. So you need to always time it.
Guys,
that the last cup of coffee, 8 hours later is when it leaves the system.
Have different reactions to caffeine, and I have had so much caffeine that coffee doesn't affect me anymore. It's actually literally like a placebo.
It means you won't get REM sleep, which means you won't have rapid eye movement sleep. You'll only have shallow sleep.
I'll send you voice notes at 2 a.m. of me talking shit as usual, Varun. That's what you will get with my lack of REM sleep.
But before Jalasmi kicks us off and says, guys, go for a break. We'll go for a break and be right back with Think Fast. Welcome back to Think Fast, where Suchita has fallen asleep. So there's a one-host show now. My co-host has fallen asleep while we were talking about gin of all things. So we're quickly moving from gin to content and seeing how long your attention span is. Are you a long attention span person or a short attention span person?
Oh my God, I can't do it with these introductions anymore. Varun, switch it up. Do it for our listeners. Come on.
This is my template. I have a template. I follow it.
Yes, but it depends on the content. It depends. The answer to all of life's questions should actually be it depends. And that's my answer to this one.
Okay, so basically getting to the story, there's this interesting consumer insight study that kind of came out from Google. It's the 2022 Ipsos survey. Basically, they kind of spoke to thousands of Gen Z consumers, and they saw that they're actually, all of them were more willing to watch long, hour-long, if not many hour-long video content rather than the short form, which again goes against what popular media has been saying, right? That attention spans are shorter, short video is the only thing that will stay. This kind of goes in the opposite direction when you kind of look at it, and it talks about some specific segments in content itself, which are really driving that out there. I mean, I'll get into those, but first reactions?
What are my first reactions? This is believable, dude. And we've discussed this in past episodes also. I think this very absurdist take by especially people on Twitter, which is short form is the future or long form is dead. There are all types of use cases. There are certain use cases that require longer explanations. Like, for example, think of education as a category on YouTube, right? And in one of our past episodes, we guys had discussed some data around YouTube. The average watch time on YouTube is northward of 10 minutes. The average time spent on a live stream is about 90% of the, overall duration of the live stream. So point being that depending on the subject matter, length can vary, from type of content to type of content, and this very clickbaity way of thinking in buckets is a little tedious and frankly kind of outdated. So I'm not surprised by any of this, but I do think a conversation needs to be had around what are the categories or the topics of conversation that require, you know what I mean, like a larger, longer explanation than others.
Yeah, and the article also kind of while it talks about a bunch of other global content pieces, also kind of talks about, they've actually broken down the categories that are really driving long form content on YouTube, which I think is the most interesting part. One is content around fan culture. It's almost like the term uses, it's the era of the professional fan. Like people are fans of certain kinds of content, really going deep into that, creating content around it, going deeper into that's become one core thing there to kind of scale with. The second one is video essays. people going really deep into a specific topic. It could be about a book, could be about history, psychology, any of those pieces, doing like half an hour, 1 hour long pieces on that, have also kind of driven this, because people are trying to learn from this. And they're finding that to be more educative and more interesting than, let's say, okay, just get a simple fact from somewhere. And the third one, which is a weird way to kind of connect everything together, which is basically people are discovering long form through short form. So they'll see a short form clip and they'll say, I want to see the longer version of this.
Yeah.
So short form in many ways, very weirdly enough, throwback to television. That's what television promos were, right? You watch a great promo for a show or an episode. Oh, let me see when the long episode is on. We literally back to that now. So these are three categories that are really driving long form content on YouTube. I think the video essay one is actually very true. People are super, I'm seeing more and more of that kind of cropping up. Even if you look at popular YouTubers, a lot of their most watched videos will be when they're doing one long video essay versus even podcasts, for instance. So that's the three pieces they kind of put out in the study.
Yeah, and you also see this in growth of platforms like Twitch, right? Like streaming, especially these like gamer focused platforms where literally there's these Gen Z kids spending hours at an end talking to each other while playing on their, video game and this, that, and the other. But
have you seen chess streaming?
No, I haven't seen chess
streaming.
There
are actual communities in India, not just globally, who watch two people play chess live for hours, like 6 hours, 7 hours. They're long streams in that sense. And they're like really into it. And it's like a hardcore scene. Like literally Amit Verma, the podcaster, he was consuming this. There's a guy called Samir Raina, who, if I remember right, who does this. Or I might be getting the name wrong. And he said that there was once a match going on and that guy's internet went off. People waited on the stream till he went to someone else's house or his office nearby to re-log in. People didn't drop off. They waited. So that's how much people are kind of sticking on for the streams.
My God, a lot of Vela log, but I don't know, man. I prefer long form content to short form. I don't know about you, but there is something about like listening to a podcast or, like reading a slightly longer article like this one that you shared that had all this information on it, or even YouTube for that matter. My consumption of YouTube has actually gone up tremendously compared to Instagram. It's also like, I feel like there is this movement towards passion economies, right? Like if you look at the kind of content that, and this is, purely anecdotal data speaking from my own experience, but I think on platforms like YouTube, I genuinely find content that I'm very passionate about. Like the only thing I watch on YouTube is home tours. And, then there may be like a little bit of, this, that, and the other. But the long form content actually gives you an opportunity to deep dive into your curiosities. Versus, for example, short form where it's just like time pass, right? Kind of like the show, like just let me while away my life while I listen to something passively. So long story short, there is this innate curiosity that I feel long form is able to peak much more than, this dopamine hit that short form usually has.
I think they play off each other though. But I agree with you that long form actually has more staying power. But short form is great to kind of get people hooked onto you or discover you and your content, but they aren't going to go back to your older stuff and watch it unless the algo feeds that in. But I feel that long form is where you actually build like long-term assets. If you look at this from a sheer, everything I'm creating is for the long-term perspective.
Exactly. And from an ROI perspective. And I think, I've seen like my behavior also, for example, when we guys are working on LBB's content strategy for YouTube versus Facebook versus Instagram, like it's actually a lot of long-term thinking that goes into YouTube versus Instagram, where literally you just have to literally and figuratively dance to the tunes of algos, right? I feel like on YouTube, there is an opportunity for more individuality versus on Instagram, where actually being more of the same drives more reach and drives more engagement, so on and so forth. So there's something very, interesting even within just the framework with which a creator has to approach either of these two platforms or channels to achieve the, end goal or end business that they want from their content. It's like it's a difference in between content for Twitter and content for SEO. SEO just gives you more juice over a period of time. And if you have your SEO strategy down to the T, you can, literally be having millions of sessions in a month without losing too much sleep over it.
And on that note, let's talk about chat days.
Yay! Oh my God, can't wait to talk about Chaddi's Banyan. Jump in, Varun. What is this segment about?
The underwear segment has been hidden from view figuratively and actually in that sense.
I can't, guys. I can't. This is why I fall asleep during some shows. But yeah, okay. So jokes aside.
So basically the reason why we're talking about it is XYXX, the menswear brand that kind of focuses on the underwear segment. They've raised another round as well. They've raised $11 million. They're going to expand to the offline space, kind of open stores up and stuff like that. But it's been interesting to see this segment kind of bring in a lot more players, and XYX is one of the first ones who spotted this kind of groove in it, because we always had, like, I think on the male side especially, there haven't been as many predominant startups focusing on this. It was always like a category in, let's say, an apparel brand in that sense, but it does seem to be an interesting spot which people are kind of like getting into now. What's your thoughts on Chuds?
I mean, in the US, it's like a phenomenal business where I think innerwear is one of those few categories that's actually been able to build a strong D2C play. Because again, it's high on repeat. It's also the kind of category where customers tend to, where there's a high switching cost. But if you're, if you're used to a particular brand, you'll end up sticking to it for a considerable period of time. Unlike, for example, fashion, where, you switch in between brands based on a trend or whatever else. So I do think innerwear is one of those like last bastions of, high repeat, decent AOVs and ASPs, and also high amount of customer loyalty despite a significant switching cost. And XYXX checks all those boxes, man. Jockey in India has built such a fantastic business. I know we've spoken about it briefly in the past, but they built a great business by, really figuring their positioning out around innerwear as well as general activewear. So segment totally makes sense. Not surprised that they've picked up $11 million. And you've seen this happen in women's innerwear considerably. I mean, Svami is a kick-ass business, as have been brands like, Enamor, for example, or Clovia. In our introduction, we briefly spoke about Nykaa launching their private label NYKD or whatever, along with obviously athleisure as a segment. So totally makes sense too.
Yeah, and also it's also a great way to kind of scale, right? If you look at their business, they obviously started off with innerwear, but they've gone to comfort wear and added more pieces there. So while in many cases, it's been, okay, let's focus on the apparel first and kind of bring innerwear in later, like a lot of the brands have done. But these guys are kind of started off with this and kind of scaled, and you kind of get the comfort in. What I'm also noticing is a lot of fitness brands are also kind of getting into this space because, and people are finally talking about chafing being a problem and people are working out. And that's like a predominant conversation globally for people who are, let's say, runners or people who go to the gym. If you look at Tego as a brand, Tego's gotten into this space. We're seeing a lot of the other guys getting into it as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this scales out across categories. And we finally I don't think we'll ever lose that visual of that VIP Frenchy man who for some reason had that robe on next to that car and that woman. It's etched in our minds, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, what is etched in like general consumer minds is what is with this weird f***ing bulge? Like, have you seen these? Dude, listeners who are under 18, you may want to tune out, but
if you're under 18 listening to this, I really want to talk to you. Like, what do you get out of this show? If you're under 18.
Dude, oh my God, the show is great if you want to, just generally have, piecemeal knowledge about multiple different topics.
Do we need to make the show, do my jokes have to be less non-veg?
Have my jokes ever been anything but non-veg? Like, that's literally all I talk about. Have you forgotten our first episode, premature ejaculation, as a commentary on crypto? But we are getting distracted, guys. Yes, can we please talk about what is with this photography, bro? Like, why do all chuddy websites have to have this very awkward, bulge?
But they can't not have a bulge there, na? Imagine if there's no bulge there. That will be even worse. Like, 1 second.
I know,
is this chuddy making things shrink? That might be the question.
No, but this is so weird.
So there obviously has to be a bulge. What do you mean? They put a sock in there. You know that, right?
Oh my God, shut up. You're talking shit.
No, 1 second, I work in advertising. I know, this is literally what you do. You put a sock in there. There is actual time spent on how that bulge needs to look.
Varun's child was born. There was a sock, guys. There was a sock.
Yes, it's born from a sock. But no, that's actually what you do. You have to figure a way to make that. I don't know if you actually use a sock anymore. It's cheaper production, but there is a prosthetic which makes it look a certain way because it has to look even, right? You don't just do it on Photoshop later. So there is actual technicality behind the bulge. I like how you're laughing. This is... ये सब किया है लाइफ में मैंने. I have monitored the bulge.
Oh my God. We need the bulge to look even, guys. Add a little bit more soft.
But getting back to XYXX, which is where this started off. So the interesting part about them is they've also been a well-run business, right? I mean, they obviously seem to have kind of grown smartly in this space. I don't know any more large players from like putting this front and center in this category in India. But have you heard of any others? Which I haven't come across any others.
I think that's what makes innerwear an interesting subcategory, right? Where innerwear has a tendency of going down the unbranded route because, you just need the product. So you have two options where, think of it, innerwear is kind of like cable chargers, right? Whether you like it or not, you're going to need them at some point in time. Yeah. And somehow the more you have, the better it is because, you'll always lose something or, something will stop working or whatever else. So innerwear typically has a tendency, especially for men, being sort of focused more on unbranded or like super branded. I think in India, there has been this like lack of that middle rung of, private brands and private labels coming up. You're seeing the growth of XYXX, you're seeing the growth of a lot of other smaller brands. Like there's a brand called Taylor and Circus, and there are 2-3 others. They're the only ones who've genuinely been able to scale. And I think that's where this proposition of, like durability, better quality materials, easy washes, all of those as propositions become important to keep consumers engaged and also scale and grow, what you're positioning to consumers is.
I feel that, I don't know, and maybe this is something we can kind of tap into and see if there is info there. Is looking at companies like, let's say, a Sold Store or any of the others that are kind of grown in this space, seeing how much this category kind of adds for them. I know for a lot of people, it might just be t-shirts and plains and stuff like that. But how much does this segment add in for brands which are apparel? But obviously, this is a part of it. It's not front and center. So that could be interesting to tap into if you can find that data point at some point.
No, but if you look at Marks and Spencer in India, or even if you look at H&M, right, what ends up moving the most is your basics. It needn't necessarily be the newest, trendiest SKU that you pushed out to consumers. So innerwear, even as a subcategory, Uniqlo does so much content and so many ads around, just their innerwear, especially for women. So long story short, like innerwear generally as a category is extremely important for most large-scale retailers to get right. I don't know of a single retailer who doesn't have apart from maybe Zara in India, especially from these large, multinational corporates and multinational brands who doesn't have a strong... Think about it yourself, dude. There's not a Marks and Spencer...
I bought Zara chaddis.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I haven't been to a Zara store in a while. But
they have it. I have bought it. I have worn their chaddis.
Point proven. I won. Conversation over. Segment over.
Although I still feel VIP Frenchie was the best. Those 2 white lines is what I miss. It accentuated the bulge when you were a child.
You mean accentuated the sock when you were a child?
The sock is only for shoots. Only for shoots. Not for anything else.
That was an amazing tidbit. That was actually, great addition to today's episode.
How do you think? Okay, let me explain. Before we go for break, guys, let me explain why there is a sock or there's a prosthetic. Imagine you're shooting in a studio and the air conditioning is on, or something else happens, and there is a male model who has worn this chaddi. Imagine something starts to expand or contract. You don't want that in the visual, right? Hence, sock or prosthetic. There is a practical reason why that exists.
Oh my God. This is amazing. This is why you're in advertising. This is why WPP bought the glitch, guys, because of Varun's precision when it comes to prosthetics.
Long back, and I will not talk about which brand. We have actually done a live stream with, I will not talk about who that person was. Like he was like this TV anchor who was in a chaddi for 24 hours on a live stream back in the day as a fun content idea for the brand. People had to keep making him do things for him to still keep his chaddi, like just be in chaddi. So they keep giving him tasks to do for 24 hours. The guy stayed awake in his chuds.
That's amazing. That's a great story. I hope that makes it to the show.
On that note, we shall take it. We shall take a break and come back with recommendations. Not about bulges, just recommendations. Welcome back to Think Fast, or as we like to call it, Think Something, or have coffee before you think it. Suchita, what's your recommendation?
Guys, I just want to apologize for my performance on today's episode because I have been just so exhausted and tired. And I woke up only when it came time, when it was time to talk about chaddis and bulges. But my recommendation will not disappoint you, ladies and gents, because I'm obsessed with the show. It's so good. It's called Bad Sisters and it's on Apple TV Plus. And it's just like...
I was going to say, is it on...
I can't do this, guys. This is why I fall asleep on shows because Varun's mind goes to all of these very shady places.
But it's blocked in India. Nobody watches view porn in India. What are you talking about?
Acha, no, but Bad Sisters is a great show, guys. It has nothing to do with porn or whatever causes Varun's bulge or lack thereof, given his child was born thanks to a sock. But it's a really nice, like, revenge. And this is how babies are born.
With socks and Bad Sisters.
Okay, but Bad Sisters is a brilliant dark comedy and I think everyone should watch it. And it's very like English and Irish and whatever like exotic accents exist in that general, continent. But brilliant show, must watch.
What is my recommendation? Actually...
If you recommend your book, I will sock you.
I'm not recommending it. I'm just pointing
Guys,
at it in the background.
Just do not buy Varun's book because we are all sick and tired of listening to this goddamn book, which has been in bookstores for the past.
No. I'll give an actual recommendation beyond the book. Although my book is a great recommendation if you are considering it, but I have a great recommendation. If you live in Bombay, and I don't know if they have branches in other cities as well, there is a Biryani branch which you find on Zomato and Swiggy it's called Belkargi, if I pronounce it right, Biryani. And they have a chicken 65 biryani. If you have not tasted a chicken 65 biryani, you have not tasted the best thing you could ever get to eat. So make sure you have a chicken 65 biryani from Belkargi Biryani. I have no affiliate money coming in from them, but it is amazing. I was told, my lovely friend Rohit Raj, if he's listening to this podcast, to order a chicken 65 along with a chicken 65 biryani. So ended up with so much chicken 65 that at some point it became more than 65.
Lies.
I don't know if that made any sense.
Such bold.
But I said it anyway.
That made no sense. And I think it's time to go, guys. It's been a long week. But ladies and gents, just as an FYI, I'm going to be dead and gone for the next 2 weeks. So you will enjoy Varun, hopefully, and yes. Amit, hopefully, or Varun will find another.
We'll find another host as well.
In my absence, but enjoy, guys. I am taking a break.
Have a good holiday.
3 years. I cannot
have
wait
a good holiday.
To peace out and enjoy my hard-earned.
America. They drive on the other side of the road. I'm just like, in case you don't know.
Of course, I've never been to America before in my life, so I have no idea. Never been.
Dollar use करते हैं वहाँ पर dollar change करके जाना.
Dollar use करते हैं. English में बोलते हैं. Yeah, no, but I'm excited. I've heard America is a shit show, but it's cool, man. I will embrace it with arms wide open because I am taking a break. I'm taking a
Very
break.
Good. You deserve it. Go have fun.
Lord
I shall see you after you come back. Please don't come back with an accent. Did we think fast?
Oh
this is
my
not
God.
going to become think fast.
Or maybe by the time I'm back, you'll pop your third kid also with your third sock.
इतना जल्दी नहीं बनते.
Yeah, but in any case, guys.
Have a good trip.
Bye. See ya.